Hi everybody and welcome back to my kitchen. So I have another great recipe for you. It's actually a recipe I shared several years ago for a cooking class and it is back by popular demand. It is my own taco recipe and there's lots of pieces to it. You don't have to do all the parts, but if you do, you will have the best tacos you've ever eaten. I promise. So we're going to get started. And it's Tuesday, ironically. So it's Taco Tuesday in my kitchen. So we're going to get started. There's lots of parts to this. I'm going to show you all the parts. That way, if you want to do all the parts, certainly can. I'm going to adjust my camera here. So I've made the pico de gallo before in other Meals That Matter classes. And it's a great repeat. It's something that you can use over and over again. It's a great topper for salads where you can repurpose it and put it on some avocado toast. It has a lot of use, so I really like to do that one again with this as well. We're also going to do a really easy guacamole to go with this. And we're going to start with some of the different pieces of this and then put it all together at the end. I'm also always looking for a way of making my recipes more plant-based. So instead of using all ground meat for this recipe, first of all, I substituted ground chicken. It is leaner. And we're going to take away half of it. Instead of doing a full pound, we're only going to do a half a pound. And the other half, we're going to do mushrooms. And this is a nice sneak because if you chop the mushrooms really small, they have the same texture as the ground chicken. So it's really easy, a great dupe. If you would like to make this completely plant-based, you could take out the 8 ounces of ground chicken and substitute black beans would be a great option for this. So a can of black beans would be a good option. So I'm going to start with chopping. We've got lots of chopping for this recipe. And I like to make my guacamole and pico first so that they have time to kind of sit and think about all their flavors. I'm going to back you up here a little bit. So this is one too that most of the ingredients are pretty readily available most of the time. So it's not like you're looking for fancy ingredients to put this together. I am going to start with some tomatoes. So I'm using Roma tomatoes, and the reason I am using Roma tomatoes is that they tend to be a little bit firmer and not as juicy as some other tomatoes can be, which is nice. They kind of hold their shape a little bit, and we want them to hold up their shape and not be super juicy. So I'm just going to cut my tomatoes. Kind of do it that way. Let's see if I can get you in here a little bit better to see. Like that. There you go. So I'm gonna just kind of go one direction, come back through the other direction. I'm sort of cutting my tomatoes into slices, and then come back and sort of cube them to these nice little like half-inch sized cubes, sort of like bite-sized pieces. Now, if you don't want to make the pico de gallo, I do recommend chopping some fresh tomatoes to put on your tacos. It's definitely a great addition. And then we're going to take the ends and slice through those. And come back through to make our half-inch dice. Just like that. Now it says 4 tomatoes. You know, it kind of depends on how big your tomatoes are. Mine are pretty good size, so I think I might just do the 4. This is an easy one to increase the amount if you're going to make it for a group. It also holds really well for several days in the refrigerator, so if you want to make a little bit extra, like I said, it's great to put on top of a salad. Kind of substitutes as a dressing. If you know me and you've watched my videos before, Squeaky Toy's out. Squeaky Toy makes an appearance every time I'm cooking and making a video. Squeaky Toy is not played with at any other time. Just when I'm doing this. Alright, I'm going to come back through this end. Just like that. Now, when I make the guacamole, some people like to put some tomatoes in their guacamole. I'm not, only because I'm going to be putting the pico de gallo on top of my tacos with the guacamole, so I feel like it's a little redundant. I don't think we need it. So like I said, it's going to be a really, really simple guacamole. I'm just sort of flavoring it up just a little bit and utilizing some of what I'm already chopping for my pico de gallo. All right. This recipe and all the parts do have a bit of chopping, so this is a nice opportunity. If you need to take a seat, pull a chair up to a counter and just sort of take your time. Enjoy the process. I always like the process of chopping. I feel like it's very therapeutic. And it's a good activity to practice some dexterity. And you only get better with practice. So the more you do it, the faster you'll be at it. All right. Just my end pieces to go. I like all these parts too because everything is very adjustable. You can adjust a lot of this to your own taste. And if you're not a tomato person, you can totally skip it. It'd be good if you substituted, you could do cucumber or something like that too. Okay, let's do a little red onion here. So this is quite a large red onion. And don't be scared of the large red onion because we're actually going to put some of this in the guacamole as well. So it will get used. Just going to take the skin off. And I'll show you my little trick to get nice little pieces of onion. That looks pretty good. All right, ready for this? So I'm going to cut it in half. I'll set my half aside. Then I just go kind of this way, cut it into sort of half moon shapes if I can. That one's kind of a funny shaped onion. And then what I like to do is sort of set the halves back on their side and then just dice through like that. And you have some nice little diced up pieces, kind of a nice uniform size. So I'm going to come back through this pile. If you don't like the pungency of red onion, you certainly could substitute green onions in this. And in the springtime, green onions are going to be certainly more plentiful. So that would be an okay substitution as well. I like the kind of the bite that the red onion sort of offers to us. It's going to seem like a lot of red onion, but it's really, to me, it can handle it. Again, if you're not making the pico and you just want to chop up some green onion or some red onion to top on top of your tacos, totally fine too. I really like the pico de gallo with this. All the pieces on this really make these tacos something special. And if you have leftover guacamole and pico de gallo, great breakfast option, super easy. Nice slice of whole grain toast. Spread some of the avocado on, top it with a little pico de gallo, and you have a really easy avocado toast that you've already got prepped and ready to go. All right, onion everywhere. Okay. Okay, other piece, I'm going to do the same thing. And this is one of these things too, I don't really measure everything. I kind of eyeball it and be like, that looks like enough onion. That looks like enough jalapeno. You don't have to get too picky about the how much. I like an equal ratio of jalapeno, red onion, and tomato in my pico de gallo. I'm going to throw this in my other bowl, because that's going to be for the guacamole, because I want some red onion in that. So I'm putting about 1/4 of this giant red onion into my guacamole. And I underestimated my pico de gallo, so I'm going to need a bigger bowl. Getting a bigger bowl. Okay. My tomatoes were bigger than I thought. 4 tomatoes it doesn't sound like a lot to me, and then you chop them up and you're like, oh wow, that is a lot. Okay, I'm going to set that one aside because I'm going to use that bowl for something else. Okay. And I'm going to do the rest of my red onion without cutting my microphone cord. Okay. And I'm going to put, so about 3/4 of the onion goes into the pico de gallo, and about 1/4 of it went into my guacamole. Kind of want numbers and ratios. Okay? All right, the next thing in my basket over here are some jalapenos. I put on the recipe about 2. It kind of depends on how big they are. This is a big one, so 2 might be enough. I like more. Like I said, I like an equal ratio of jalapeno to onion to tomato. So I'm good with more. My dog is usually silent all day. This is the noisiest I've ever heard him. This is how I cut my jalapeno. I just cut around the seeds. Oh, done. There you go. And I do want 1 jalapeno for sure to go into my guacamole. So one of them is going in there. Now, if you don't want yours to be spicy, you could substitute just a, sweet pepper, like a green pepper or red pepper, not a spicy pepper. If you like more heat, you certainly could do a different kind of pepper. Jalapenos, I feel like if you seed them, that takes away a lot of the heat. And I am not, if you know me, I'm not a super spicy kind of person. I like a little bit of spice. I like a little bit of heat, but I don't like a ton. So I wouldn't use it if it was like super spicy. And that's what I like about jalapenos. They offer kind of a sort of a sweet spice. If you have never cooked with a spicy pepper before, just one warning, if you wear contact lenses, make sure your hands are washed super thoroughly before you put your hands anywhere near your eyes. I've made that mistake before. Forgot that I cut jalapenos and then took my contact lenses out. Ay. Okay. So I'm just cutting these sort of down the long way into thin strips. And then once I slice it all up, then I'll have a better idea of is that enough or not for me. The fun part about these recipes is it's kind of like you can do whatever ratio you're comfortable with and what you like. So if you're like, I really like the tomatoes, I'm going to do extra tomatoes, go for it. All right, so I have just a pile now, and I'm going to turn my whole pile the other direction and just slice them down this way. It's like speed chopping 101. That one got away from me. All right. You can split your pile into 2. So, like I said, I want 1 whole jalapeno in my guacamole, so I'm going to start putting some of that in there. Just a little bit more. I always buy extra, so I always buy like extra peppers and extra tomatoes because as I'm making it, I'm always like, I could use a little bit more. Or I get really excited and I'm like, ooh, pico de gallo for the week. I'm going to make a ton. All right. Throw those in. Perfect. All right. I have one more little one here. I'm going to cut this one off too. Cut his hat off. And then just slice. Seeds discarded. All right. And I think it's going in my pico. Okay. Next, we've got avocados. So it depends on how much guacamole you want to make. Keep in mind, guacamole, once you open your avocado, it will start to brown. Now we're going to add lime juice to this, so that's going to help keep it from browning. But it still won't last very long in the refrigerator. I say, 3 days max. So you may not want to overdo it depending on how much you like it, how much you want to eat it. If you want the leftovers, like I said, to make avocado toast for breakfast, you can definitely do more. One of my avocados was kind of little, so I think I'm going to do 3. So it says 2. It's kind of a 2 to 3 depending on the size. So I'm just taking the pits out. These are nice, ripe avocados, and if you're trying to decide how to choose your avocado, if you look at the colors, so this one is really completely brown. It's completely ripened, which is perfect. We really don't want any of the light green left on it. You also, so this is a good example too, it's completely brown. Now when you sort of squeeze it a little bit, it kind of gives just a little. It doesn't squish. It just sort of gives a little. That means it's ready. So that's a perfect one. If you give it a squeeze and it really squishes, that's probably too ripe. And if you give it a squeeze and you feel nothing coming back, then that's not quite right enough. So what I'm doing right here, this is my guacamole bowl. I'm just taking my spoon and I'm scooping the avocado right out of its shell. Scoop. And it goes. Perfect. No avocado left behind. That one. And I do enjoy the guacamole for breakfast, so I do tend to make a little bit more. If you feel like you won't do that, just make a little bit less of it. That's fine. All right. Avocados are in. The next thing, I just forgot my squeezer, is lime juice. So this is also a very subjective topic, depending on how juicy your limes are. I say on the recipe juice of 2 limes. You know what? If you get a lime that's just like not putting out a whole lot of juice, then you may want to do more. So I always buy a couple extras or have a couple extras on hand just in case. So I just cut up 3. So we're going to see how well these juice for us. How juicy are you? They're pretty juicy. Now, like I said, for the guacamole, the lime juice is a really important step because it's going to keep it from browning. Keeps it from oxidizing and keeps it fresher longer if you have leftovers. And like I said, this really is nice. This pico de gallo is a really nice, almost like a way of dressing a salad because there's the lime juice on it that mixes with the tomatoes. Plus you've got the onion. There's tons of flavor in it. You really don't need salad dressing on a salad. So that was 2 limes in that one. Now I'm going to juice one. That one was not very juicy. Putting this on my guacamole. All right. I am going to cut. Definitely want at least juice of 2 limes for your guacamole, at least. These last 2 limes weren't super juicy. It also depends how much too you like the lime flavor in there. If you don't like it quite as much, you don't have to add quite as much. I really like it. I'm going to do one more. So that was 2 and 2. I'm going to do another one on my pico. Perfect. And I'm going to do another one. So I put the lime juice on the avocado before I mash it. I feel like it helps it mash it too. So I do that first. All right. Great. So, last thing, so you can see, I am going to use, so traditionally you would add cilantro. Sadly, I do not like cilantro. Cilantro tastes like soap to me, and it makes everything it touches taste like soap to me. So I'm anti cilantro. If you like cilantro, go for it. I envy you. I wish I liked it because it's hard. You know, I was in Costa Rica recently and they put cilantro on everything and it was hard because everything tasted so good except for whatever the cilantro touched. And I was like, oh. So I try very hard to work around it, but sometimes you can't. So I use flat leaf parsley. I feel like it has just a little bit more flavor than curly parsley does. And it somewhat mimics the cilantro. It does offer a really nice freshness to this, which is amazing. So I'm going to keep working on my parsley here, and I will be right back. Hi everybody, so I'm back, and I know this probably looks like a mountain of parsley. It kind of is. But I'm going to use it for both again. That's why I like making these two things side by side, because really you're doing both steps for both at the same time. Again, it's time saving. So I'm just kind of roughly running my knife through this. I pulled all the kind of tougher stems off, and now I'm just left with the more tender stems and the really nice leaves on here. Doesn't need to be super tiny. But it really does offer a nice freshness to both of these. Sorry, my spoon is banging around here on my board. The other nice thing about this taco recipes is all the pieces could be made ahead. So you could, when you have more time on a weekend, make all the pieces to this, and then it's just kind of a pull it out of the fridge and heat up, and you've got dinner in minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to turn there. There's my 2 bowls. So I'm just dividing this parsley up between both. I'm not measuring it. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Best part about this, really don't need to measure everything very strictly. Okay, coming back over here. So, we do need to add a little bit of salt to each of these. I'm adding about a half a teaspoon of salt. It's about a 1/4 teaspoon to my guac and about a half a teaspoon to my pico de gallo. Okay. And I am going to put some ground pepper on. Remember, flavor all your layers. She's stuck. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So now I'm just going to take, you can use, if you have like a potato masher, you could use that. You can, some people like the fork method. I'm a spoon girl, so I just like mashing it up on the back of my spoon. I don't like my guacamole super, I like to have some texture left. I don't need it to be super, super smooth. It kind of depends too how ripe your avocados are. If they're really ripe like mine are, mine were perfect, it's going to mash up really easily. If they're just still a little bit greener, it won't mash up quite as nice. So once you have those avocados sort of mashed up a little bit, then we can dig down in the bottom and get our onion and our jalapeno. It smells so good and fresh with all that lime juice. And that's about the consistency that I like. I like it to be just a little bit chunkier. So that's done. Done. Set it aside. Grab another spoon and run my spoon through my pico de gallo. And this is the point where I'm like, do I have that perfect ratio of tomatoes to red onion to jalapeno? And you can change and adjust it once you have it all mixed together. I like my ratio right now. It looks about even of everything, which is what I like. I will tell you the flavor of this gets better with age. So making this ahead is actually a really good thing to do because the longer it sits and kind of all that flavor sort of marries together, it is divine. So we're going to set those aside and be right back, and we're going to get started on the tacos. Hi, everybody. So we are ready to build our tacos and make our tacos. So the most important part of this is the seasoning. So we are not going to use a pre-packaged taco seasoning. We're actually going to make our own taco potion. So this is a piece of the recipe that I did borrow from Alton Brown from Food Network. He calls it his taco potion, and it's really a combination of seasonings to make your own taco seasoning, which is incredible. You will never buy another packet of taco seasoning after you try this. It also doesn't have a lot of those additives and things that are in there. You can really control what's in it, and you can also adjust what's in it based on what you like and your taste. So we're going to start with chili powder. That's not chili powder. That's chili powder. So we're going to do 2 tablespoons of chili powder. Now, chili powder, it's not, to me, store-bought chili powder really is not super spicy. It's actually very mild unless you buy hot chili powder. And this is, comparable to what you would get in a taco seasoning packet if you've made tacos before with the seasoning. So it is not spicy. Okay, so we're going to do 1 tablespoon of cumin. This is my brand new cumin. Sorry, gotta open it up. We got fresh cumin. I like doing this too because you buy all these herbs and seasonings, and a lot of times they sit in your cupboard, and gosh, who knows how long sometimes they've been sitting in your cupboard, and really they lose their flavor after they're in there for a year. So it's a good opportunity to use up things that you probably already have in your cupboard, which I think is the best part. I hate to waste. Never like to waste. Okay. The next thing we need is 1 teaspoon of coriander. There was a joke in my house. For some reason, we ended up with like 3 containers of coriander. And my husband always said, we can only make recipes with coriander in them because we have to use up all the coriander. I'm finally down to the last one. We have successfully used up most of the coriander. All right. Then we're going to do, everybody knows, it's my favorite, smoked paprika. I actually go to Allspice and buy good smoked paprika because it's really one of my favorites. But the smoked paprika, there's just something really special about it. It's really just a wonderful flavor. Okay. All right, what am I missing? Cayenne. So this does add a little bit of heat. It's just a half a teaspoon. You can skip it if you really don't want to have any heat in there. I think it's nice to have a little bit of heat, so I do go ahead and add that in there. And then this is a really important step. So cornstarch. So this is what's going to make your tacos sort of have that nice thick glaze on them. This kind of helps thicken your sauce just a little bit. So we're going to add a couple teaspoons of cornstarch. And there is some kind of thickener in the prepackaged taco seasonings too. And that's why, your tacos, it's not like a thin sauce on them. It's in there to help kind of thicken it up. So we just mix that together. Oh, didn't add salt. 1 teaspoon of salt. This is what's going to season our veggies and our meat or our ground chicken. It's important to have salt. So don't overdo salting any other layer because just remember we did put our salt into our seasoning. All right, seasoning's ready. I'm going to set that aside. And we're going to come back and chop up all our veggies and put it all together. All right, so in this little bag here is our secret ingredient. It is oyster mushrooms. Now you can use any mushrooms that you want to. I like these because they are a great dupe for ground meat because they chop up really, really nice. And I made this the first time. I tested it on my family, and I'm like, do you notice anything different about tacos? And they're like, no, not really. And I'm like, ha, I used mushrooms instead of all chicken. And they were like, what? Shocked. So these are local. They are the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Aren't they so pretty? These are Iowa grown. I do kind of trim off the bottom sort of tougher piece of this. And then, like I said, we're just going to chop these up so it's about the same size as the ground meat component of this, so that if you are trying to dupe anyone, and we do want it to be, it's in a taco, so it's kind of ground up meat. We want it to be a similar texture as everything else in there. So I'm just kind of like rough chopping through these. If you do cremini mushrooms or white button mushrooms, that's totally fine too. Again, you're just going to have to chop those up well. These mushrooms are so fresh and so tender, you hardly have to chop them. Like they're just the best mushrooms. And that is one thing I really like about Prudent Produce, that they can get these beautiful, delicious mushrooms. You can do a combination of mushrooms too. If you're like, I only have 4 ounces of these, and then I had 4 ounces of button mushrooms in my fridge, that's fine. You can do a mixture. It's just so fun how texturally they are so similar, and really, in vegetarian cooking, mushrooms add a real meatiness without the meat, and that's really the benefit of utilizing them. They also help us cut the fat in our recipes. When we cut out some of the meat, even lean chicken is going to have some fat on it, whereas your mushrooms are not, which is really nice. So I'm just chopping away at these guys. Now the recipe also does call for a little bit of stock. If you're going to do this completely plant-based, you can substitute that with veggie stock. You can use, honestly, depending on what I have thawed in my refrigerator, sometimes I do this with veggie stock and sometimes I do it with chicken stock. Today I happen to have some chicken stock thawed, so I am using chicken stock. Usually for the program and previous programs, I did include my stock recipes as one of the recipes with the ingredients in your bin. I did not do that this time. I am going to share the stock recipes. So if you would like to make your own veggie or chicken stock, I highly recommend it. A lot of the recipes do call for stock, and it's something I keep in my freezer at all times because, again, we want to make cooking easy, fast. We want it to be as easy as pulling something out of the freezer that's ready to go. It's, the stocks, they take a little bit of time to cook. They don't require a lot of work per se. It's more just waiting. So it's a nice thing to make kind of maybe on a weekend when you have time, or on a day off, and then you've got it ready to go. Homemade stock just has so much more flavor than what you buy in the grocery store. I'm always disappointed by grocery store stock, unless you know somebody that makes delicious stock. Then you absolutely could use locally produced, sort of homemade-ish type stock. But I always have stock in my freezer. And right now I have both chicken and veggie stock, and mushrooms are really the basis of any good veggie stock. All right, these are my mushrooms. I mean, it's not pretty. It doesn't have to be. They're going to cook down. But we just kind of want them in sort of little pieces. I'll fold you down here to mimic ground meat. So let's set those guys aside. And it looks like a lot. It really looks like a ton. But remember, it's really going to cook down quite a bit. So don't be nervous about the quantity. Okay. Next calls for onion. I got these like little puny onions, so I'm going to do 2. And I like lots of good onion flavor in my tacos. So if you've got one nice size onion, you can do 1. Again, you can use yellow onion, you can use white onion. It's kind of up to your own taste. I tend to not use the red onion for this part. I tend to use the yellow onion or a white onion. But you can use whatever you have. Okay. And yeah, these are little guys, so I am going to use both of them. All right. And these don't have to be quite as perfect, as tiny as what we did in our pico, so I just kind of run down the side. Just run down like that. I'm just throwing it in with my mushrooms because I'm going to cook all of that together. Like so. Beautiful. And just one more. And one more. These onions are really nice and soft. They cut up beautifully. All right. So then we just need 2 cloves of garlic. And we're going to finely chop those up. So I'm going to work on that. And then we're going to go over to the stove and start putting it together. Hi, everybody. So welcome back. So I've got a little olive oil in my pan here warming up. It's nice and warm. I'm going to go ahead and add in my onions and garlic and mushrooms. Grab a spoon. Make sure I get every little bit. Now I did put a little oil in the pan because since we're doing the veggies and mostly veggies and there's only just a little bit of ground chicken, which is not going to render much fat. I have extremely lean ground chicken here. We do need to add a little bit of oil to cook our veggies down in. All right, so I'm gonna keep working on these. It's gonna take us probably about 7-8 minutes to cook these down a little bit, and I'll come back and we're gonna add in the chicken. Okay, so we're back, and you can see my mushrooms and onions have cooked down quite a bit. Reduced down. We got all that liquid out of our mushrooms. Our onions are nice and soft, which is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm sort of making a well in the middle and just dropping in my ground chicken. So I'm just going to work on my ground chicken until that is browned, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back because my chicken is all browned, and you can't even tell the difference now between the ground chicken and the mushrooms. It really just kind of all melted together. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my taco potion. And I like to make sure that it's well coated over everything in the pan. So you can see everything's getting a bit of that taco seasoning on it first. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my stock. And we're just going to give this just about 2 or 3 minutes to let it just kind of thicken up just a little bit. It really doesn't take very long. We want everything to get coated. You want that stock to get heated through. And almost immediately, since we did use cornstarch, you'll see the sauce sort of thickening up. I'll try to take you off here so you can see it's getting bubbly and thickened and delicious. Perfect. So I'm just going to let that finish thickening up for 2 more minutes, and then we'll make our tacos. Hi everybody, so it is time to have tacos. So I have right here a corn tortilla that I've warmed up, and I just want to show you how I assemble mine. So I just go ahead and put some of this beautiful guacamole on the bottom. That's my glue. Then I have some really pretty leaf lettuce here. Throwing out a little bit of lettuce. And then I put on some of my beautiful pico de gallo, and then our mushroom and chicken taco meat. And now I get to eat. So thank you again for joining me for Taco Tuesday, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.